we're going to be doing a little trip now from since we were Speyside last time, and we're going to go from Speyside up to little northeast Highlands side. Well, kind of pass through it. So we're going to start with the Glendronach. Okay, so we're going to be starting with Glendronach around here. Since we were in Speyside last week, it's nice to, I think we'll get this sherry bomb, so we're really starting on a high note, and then we'll kind of work our way up here, this part here, to Tain. And Tain's in a place called the Black Isle, lovely part of Scotland. It's really tucked away in the northeast up there. And then after that, we'll have a good time in Glenmorangie, and then we'll kind of scoot up the coast, and we'll come visit our old friend Old Pulteney up here at that side there. So I was thinking that's kind of like the path we'll take. So we're kind of sticking in the northeast Highlands.
I think that's great.
That means we're really starting with that Glendronach. So you guys are doing the Parliament. I'm doing the 15-year-old revival. So have you got your bottle, Ryan?
All right.
Got the bottle for.
Chance has my bottle. I've got the mini me. So
the mini me.
Yeah, Chance gets to display. Yeah, toss it back.
Yeah.
What was that you just tossed back? Hopefully not the Glendronach Parliament 21.
No, that was just some water.
Okay. Look at that. One little dram is left.
Yeah.
That is correct. There was enough for me to pour half to filling up 1 ounce of a 2-ounce bottle, and the other half will be 1 dram, and together we will enjoy this delicious, delicious pour.
Mine's just pouring. I'm just going to enjoy the sherry bomb on the nose.
Man, I just don't even know. This is my very favorite bottle of whiskey, I think. Boy.
For this part of the country, it's your favorite.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right now, at this point in time, in this place, this is my favorite bottle of whiskey. But, who knows what the future holds, or the past. It is delicious. It is candy-like. It has just these incredible sherry notes. And this is predominantly both Oloroso and PX sherry, right, Chance? It says so on the bottle, I think.
Yeah.
I believe you're right, yeah.
That's what it is there.
Combination of the finest Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez sherry casks.
Yeah. And I'm basically having the 15-year-old of the same one, so you guys are having a few extra years on the cask. The sherry really to do more to it.
Yeah, like I said, I would love to know the proportion of time spent in each type of cask. I wish they would go into depth about that kind of information.
I think you just need to go there.
I agree. I'll just straighten them out.
Please. Yeah, you need to talk to them. Just get a little bit dry. That dried cherry. This is delicious.
So you have the 15 you said, Gary?
Yeah, I've got the 15, exact same as you, except it's called the Revival.
But it also has the PX sherry and the Oloroso as well.
Yeah, it's the same. So basically, you've just picked off at 21, and I've got it at 15.
Yeah.
So we Glendronach do it. You've got some special casks that I've pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm really looking forward to this. Shall we cheers, gentlemen?
Cheers. So Gary, what can you tell us actually about the Glendronach distillery itself?
So it's just outside. You've got the Speyside region we've seen. So it's just to on the map. If you're looking at it, just to the right, and the area is called Aberdeenshire, right next to this, and that's the oil city of Scotland, the equivalent of Houston. So the Houston of Scotland's Aberdeen, and just outside is this place, and Glendronach is actually in a little glen up. It's tucked away. It's another one of these distilleries that was kind of hidden for a while. And very much known that it's a sherry cask house as well. So very much like Macallan. Except these ones, you're really getting those flavours, that richness that's wrapping around that you're tasting. I think you guys have been enjoying. And I thought it's quite appropriate since we were doing last week, really deep into playing the different casks in Speyside. Now as we're going up into the Highlands, we're kind of starting off with it's really a little transition. So we're kind of going into our imaginary car and we're going to go up to, we're going to go and visit the northeast. That is kind of this week's lineup. I suppose really chosen by chance.
Delightful.
Thinking through what to have, so it was like good.
Chance, if you grab that bottle, what's the ABV on this fellow here?
Let's see.
So I got my handy dandy water dropper with fresh filtered water in it.
So we're at 48%
okay.
alcohol by volume.
So it's sort of doubtful that this would open up much with additional water, probably, I think, right?
Yeah, a little dab, but there would be much. I mean, this doesn't really need it, doesn't it? It's not as low. I mean, you guys are starting on a 21-year-old Glendronach sherry bomb. It's our transition, so it's certainly like a big one. I mean,
so this is a huge Scotch. This is a big flavors in here. Was it wise of us to start off, even though this was the furthest south of the distilleries we're looking at today? Would this have been a good finale Scotch, or?
It would be, but we've got several finale Scotches. That's the thing.
That's right. They can all be finale Scotches. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's no, but the one when we go to Glenmorangie, because we're going to be visiting Glenmorangie, and I think we're going to do like a kind of the range a little bit. We're going to start with just the regular Glenmorangie, and then we're going to have the 18-year-old extra rare. Is it called extra rare? What they call it? Extremely rare.
Extremely rare, not just extra rare.
And then,
mega rare.
We'll finish with something just absolutely special, as like the Signet. Like we'll finish off with that one, just an absolute treat as well. So another one that's like a one you could wrap up with. So we're kind of as little tours go. This is like a real mix of a lot of different things, and then we've got Old Pulteney, which is not actually going to be quite as strong. I mean, if we want, we could actually jump to the Old Pulteney and come back to Glenmorangie. That Signet is going to be absolutely laying on a bunch of chocolate, or we just stay with Glenmorangie, and we'll finish with Old Pulteney, which will be like that little salty note we're going to get there. We're going to get the smokiness from the coastal side.
That's true. We do have we have an inefficient travel plan if we're going to take in our imaginary car up the coast all the way to but I think it's about the adventure, road trip.
Since we'll start with like the Glendronach, which would be normally if we were like doing, if any of us were actually doing like tastings with friends, we'd probably do the Glendronach in a different order. But I think it's just a nice transition from Speyside up that we're having that, and it's a nice little sherry bottle. I mean, it's just delicious. I mean, you guys are smelling on you're doing the wood. It's smelling nice. I mean.
Yeah. Plus, next week we're going into the islands, and we're gonna be at Highland Park and such. And so with Old Pulteney being previously the northernmost distillery in mainland
until recently, there's Wolfburn has usurped that title. Is that right, Gary?
Yes. Yeah. My understanding was not by much, like a mile or something, right?
Yeah,
it was pretty petty. So on the back of my hand, FYI, I'm getting like this it's almost butterscotch, like almost not caramel, but like very like brown sugar, like almost sweet potato pie type brown sugar,
Yeah, it's not as strong as the woods on this one. You're right. It's not the PX. I'm getting more Oloroso with the.
Yeah, it's more of a nuttiness than it is sort of because I associate the Oloroso with more of a nutty fruitiness, and whereas the PX is very syrupy to me.
Yeah,
and I'm getting like
dryness, a little dryness to it.
I'm just getting like a sweet potato pie type stuff going on here.
You made me hungry.
I'm
getting Big Macs and steak.
A savory scotches. Yeah. BLT.
Is that? Oh, I think I get some sushi in there. That's odd. Just kidding. None of that's true. I gotta say, I love this Glendronach, Ryan. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that dram. The sweet flavors in it just so good.
They're really undergirded by that nuttiness, I think, of the Oloroso. It's the Oloroso plus PX. I feel is a killer combination. Whatever they do to this is just to perfection, I feel.
Yeah. Tell us if you don't like it, Ryan. This is a bedtime one. This is you'll have this beside you, warming you before you go to bed. That's nice.
If we ever get to the Bunhab in 12, that is a Scotch. That is the only Scotch I've ever said I just out and out don't like at all.
I thought you. Oh wait, no, you weren't a fan of the McKellen Virgin Oak, if I remember correctly.
Not a fan of it. Yeah, that one's actually I don't like that one either. So it's two Scotches. You're right. Thank you. Keeping me honest.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's go down to Glenmorangie because we're going to be around there for a few minutes.
Yeah.
At least. So shows your bottle chance to get the classic. We're going to do the original Glenmorangie. So tell us about Chance, since you're a Glenmorangie aficionado.
So I do love Glenmorangie, and one of the things I love about Glenmorangie is so their core lineup, right, is generally it's their original, which is what we're about to taste, being an excellent representation of Highland Scotch. But their core lineup is just their original with finishing casks. And my understanding is that Dr. Bill, their head distiller, invented finishing stuff in casks, and so you get a lot of it with Glenmorangie. In fact, every year he comes out with another kind of like odd thing that they've done, and I love that. And he's the head distiller both for Glenmorangie as well as Ardbeg, which of course we know also does their yearly cask. So the original, the Quinta Ruban, the La Santa are some of their just every year baseline, and the Quinta Ruban and the La Santa are just finished in a different cask after being the original, which is one of the things I love about it. But the original, which we're about to taste, is a 10-year-old from Glenmorangie, perfected by the 16 Men of Tain. I don't know who that is. It's just a great drop every time.
Who are the Gary? Can you help us out with these 16 Men of Tain?
Tain
sounds like something. Sounds like you.
On the black. Well, think about the Black Isle. It makes me think of Vikings actually. Like 16 Men of Tain on the Black Isle. But it's that's basically the guys in the distillery. That's the guys that run the distillery. 16 guys of Tain. You'll have that are there that are busy like running everything. So tell us, what cask is it?
I believe it's just a bourbon cask.
It is just a bourbon cask. That's correct. That was a question to you. You're an expert on Glenmorangie, so you should know your range.
I don't know that I'm an expert so much as just I've got a lot of bottles.
Okay, well that's okay.
You're more of an expert than I am. The last one I got was the Meilshawn. That was my last Glenmorangie pickup, which I thought was very, very sweet. Which makes me think it's weird that they're adding yet another sweet one to their lineup.
Yeah, they're just amusing themselves. They're having some good fun with the whiskeys.
That's fine.
You know what's
we gotta love your work, right?
Something that just struck me. So one of the things. So next week we're doing the islands. Part of that will be Highland Park, but Glenmorangie and Highland Park have a similarity. They are the only two distilleries in Scotland that use natural spring water that is hard water with a higher mineral content. The other distilleries don't, and so there may be some similarities there. Oh, toss that out there.
Very good. Because traditionally in Scotland, the water's all soft, and why is that? It's because the water is going through hard rocks, and so as it's dripping through there, everything's getting stripped out of it. So the water in Scotland, you can drink straight out of the rivers, and it's soft. There's no like calcium buildup or anything. So if you're in Scotland, you'll see your all the different appliances. You don't see it. It's just it's soft water. There's no buildup. So it's not a thing that exists kind of in Scotland. So they must have a spring where they're bringing the water out before it's actually been permeated through the rocks.
I love this. I love Glenmorangie. It's
delicious. It's very lightweight compared to
this. Yeah. So we're talking a 10-year-old in a bourbon cask. It's just absolutely great.
Let's do the hand test on the old Glenmorangie original. So this is 10 or 12, you said?
It's a 10.
Original.
Yeah, he's got a 10. This is like one of the standard lineups. This
is only bourbon cask, I assume?
Yep.
Only bourbon
cask.
Yeah. It's just very bright. It's extremely bright. It's just very cheerful to me. It's a very cheerful color. Very like sunbeam yellow. Very pale straw sunbeam yellow. Very bright flavors on the back of my hand here.
Which is why it's like a favorite with a lot of people.
A little bit of wood. Actually, I get the more influence of wood here because I guess the PX casks of that Glendronach are masking that wood almost. But here it's quite apparent, and it blends so well with that bourbony honeyness that I'm getting also.
Yeah. Also, a lot of floral notes. I'm definitely getting some, like you said, the honey, but more, for me, more like honeysuckle, where you get a little bit of that floral astringency and such as well. And then
you're right. When I was a kid, there was a huge honeysuckle vine on the fence behind my house, and I would always go out there. And you can pluck out the stamen, and you get like a little bit of.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite things when I was a kid.
It's been a while since I've had like the base one, and it was a really good idea, Chance.
Delicious. It's like a superior baseline, I think, bourbon aged whiskey, 10-year, and it's not too high priced a bottle, is it?
No, I mean, like, if I remember, like, I think I usually get them for, like, in, like, the $40 range. Like, they are not expensive.
$30 you can get a good Glenmorangie and that to start, and
Hmm.
there's nothing to be said, isn't it? It's like really good. I mean, it's a good example of a Highland whiskey. So tell us about our Glenmorangie enthusiast then, since I won't call you expert. Tell us about the extremely rare.
So the extremely rare cracks me up. It is a bottle I very rarely open, and there is no good reason for that. It's not like I have any issues with it. I just, for being extremely rare, I see it everywhere. I don't know about you guys, but every store I go into has it.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, it opened extremely rarely. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That 18-year-old. But it's an 18-year-old in the bourbon cask, so
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there's got to be, what we're going to be getting here is that it's like the wood is going to be having more of an effect, and it's got to be using some nice oak casks and things like that.
Yeah, in fact, and I may just be speaking completely nonsense here, but I believe it's probably just the original with an additional 8 years in the cask.
And then probably, I'd imagine they've got some rare casks that they're using.
I think it's just really wonderful. I don't know what to tell you except this is an awesome Scotch. Just period. It's great.
I agree.
It's sort of like everything I like about that original. Just every single aspect I like has been enhanced. You know.
It's amplified. Yeah, it's delicious.
And again, you typically will get more as you age something in a cask. You will typically get more influence from that cask. But I feel that it just comes out just as balanced, except everything is a bit more intense, you know.
And smooth.
That 17 and 18-year-old period is kind of like the sweet spot when it comes to.
Yeah, I agree. I have
up to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is lovely. This is good.
Yeah, I could drink this any time of day.
Really good choice, Chance. This is good.
This is delicious. Yeah. I think that's one thing about all these bourbon cask only expressions that it's just they're so smooth and they're all easy drinking. And what's the ABV on this fellow? Is this also going to be like a 40-ish something or other? Yeah, 43.
So it's a little bit lower, but
is that a good?
Oh, it's lower than the Glendronach compared to the. Oh, it's got the same exact ABV compared to the original.
It's probably the same stuff. They just take it out of the cask sooner, you know.
Well, but so I was thinking that too, but they would have to account for the Angel's share.
That's accounted for in the price, right?
I'm sure. I'm definitely sure of that.
They're just going to put a little bit extra water and bring it down to 43. No, somebody's chosen that this is the ABV that they would like to have this expressed at. So that's a lot of the time. I'm looking up to see where they get the bourbon cask from. I think it would be
Jack Daniels.
You had that right on.
The expert here, Jack Daniels. It's actually a very quick finish.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
None of us have said, I've got a lingering, like the Glendronach, you had a bit of a lingering.
Yeah.
This is more, it's a very...
Yeah, you're right.
It's there and it's gone. I mean, you've got the enjoyment of it. I mean, it's very quick little finish on that.
I like that. Maybe for me, it kind of encourages me to take that next drink because it's already gone and I want some more. It's so delicious.
That's a marketing ploy. I made it a quick finish so that you feel, I need another one.
Exactly.
It's very easy drinking. You know, or at least partially.
Bomb for you. So the 18-year-old, this extremely rare. The thing about it is it spends 15 years in the oak bourbon cask, which we kind of know, and we've said it's Jack Daniels. But then after that, 30% is transferred into some Oloroso sherry casks where it spends its final days. Then it's all put back together.
Wow.
So here is something, and that's what that fineness we're getting there. I mean,
wow.
You see how fine that was on like the tongue. I think that's a little taste of the. And we were thinking it was like the wood was going, but what we were flavor tasting there was like the actual, a little touch of the sherry on there on the back end of Oloroso. So
that's amazing. That's not on the bottle.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But anyways, that was interesting. That was good there, and extremely rare. Just finding out a little tidbit there, a little something extra. So with that bourbon and then just getting it's getting a little blushing of the sherry in the back end. It's really good. Let's keep us moving along here, and now we're going to do the Signet. So another big monster. It could have been a finishing one. So what we're going to do, we're going to be layering myself with some like now coffee chocolate. I mean, this one is like just absolutely amazing. Having the Signet.
I even love this box. Like,
it's pretty cool, man.
I mean, just the bottle. I mean, the whole, I don't know, the cocoa color of it all the way down. Have you seen that?
It's a beautiful bottle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got the older box that the top lifts off, and you pull the bottle out of the top. It doesn't have a door.
I even like this design here. That's the Glenmorangie seal that you see on every bottle, and I love that they still kept it going.
But it's just big.
Cork,
it's bigger.
You see how heavy the cork is? I mean, like, look at that. I mean,
yeah.
The marketing is amazing for having such a heavy cork. I mean, this is like probably the heaviest cork that there is amongst the bottles from it.
And we're also bottled at 46% for this guy.
Yes. Yeah. Same.
And it just behooves you that. So what they say with this one is because it doesn't really have an age statement. But I'm sure you're going to tell us, Chance. But it's like they're taking casks that are aged. They've got casks as old as 30-year-olds they're doing in this one, and they've really handpicked this one together to like really meld it into this beautiful, absolutely, I call it a chocolate bomb. In fact, you could give this and you could be forgiven for not thinking it's part of the Glenmorangie range because it's so different from the regular.
So there's a couple of interesting facts about this bottle. The first is that there are 2 different types of barleys that this is made out of.
Right.
One that is actually called chocolate barley, and that's used for a lot of beers. And so perhaps that's where this kind of chocolatiness comes from in this dram.
I didn't even know that there were multiple types of barley, let alone to be used in distilling.
Man, you learn something new every day. And these are virgin oak casks, not previously used.
Really?
Yes.
And we've talked about how barley is tends to be very easy to influence with virgin oak. So I'm fascinated that because this is sort of the top of the standard Glenmorangie line.
I mean, this is like your Glenmorangie Rolls Royce. It's up there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the first. I mean, for me, it's just always the first one is that dark chocolate.
Yeah.
But then the more you smell it, then I'm starting to get like a coffee. It's like I'm getting a little espresso, Arabic coffee coming in the back, but it's just so subtle.
Maybe
It's a monster, isn't it? It's absolutely delicious. I mean, I've not even tasted it yet, and I'm just lost in the aromas that are coming off of it.
This is another one of those that, like we were talking about last time, I could totally understand just walking around and smelling all night long.
Mm-hmm. This could be an easy one too. Oh my goodness, I just had it.
It's a wonderful. This is one of my favorite bottles, and it just is. Not only is it just really damn good, but it also is just very unique. I can't think of a bottle that shares too many characteristics with this.
I'd agree. Yeah, this one is. I mean, it's Signet. I mean, it just like absolutely owns this space. This is the smells, everything. This was saying like dark chocolate, and it's like dark chocolate, like hinting on like coffee. I mean, this is like a great after dinner. I mean, you've just had that big full barbecue that you guys have Texas, a big full barbecue meal. You've had maybe had a Lafroig with that meal, one with those big heavy barbecue smoky flavors, and afterwards you're thinking about dessert. You've already had your cheese plate. You now want a little bit of dark chocolate, but about to maybe have a little cup of coffee, and you just say, let me just fit one of these in. This is when that one comes into the meal. Back end, absolutely like great. I know. I mean, it just layers the finish on it. Delicious.
Oh, it's so good.
Wonderful.
I mean, this is when you're skipping dessert, and as I said, you're just maybe having a little touch of chocolate, and you're layering this one on top. There's a little bit of orange as well in there.
Yeah, there's some lovely little like citrusy, fruity flavors in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what alchemy they're doing to create this one. I mean, they're using They're using like just a mix of the regular barrels, but up to the 30-year-olds. So
Yeah,
some of these
30-year-olds.
they're playing really with some good magic in there. They're really, I think it must be the old woods or something that bring it all together.
And this is a nice long finish as well. We were talking about how the extra rare, or the extremely rare, the super rare, whatever it was, had a very quick finish, whereas this one tends to linger and develop almost similar to what I typically find from a Islay Scotch.
Yeah, I'm still tasting it from the last, and it's
There's just a wonderful commingling of flavors here that is just unique amongst, I would say, all the bottles that I have.
isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you just reach for this one. This is
And I think
definitely an end of night. And I wanted to relax. I maybe had a really lovely meal, and afterwards I would like this. Before I might go back into like something a little bit more smokier to do as a nightcap. This is definitely the end of their. This is a dreamy one. Love this one. Good choice, Chance. Once more.
Really, really good choice.
one of the things I love about this is that it's the Rolls Royce of the Glenmorangie line. It's the top up. It's the top one that they put out, and it's so unique in comparison to everything else, right? Like, so we've talked again. The original becomes the Nectar Noir, becomes the Quinta Ruban, becomes the La Santa, and then you've got this that is, to use your phrase, Gary, alchemy of whiskey or something that has created this amazing thing in my glass. And I think I love that about it. I just love how unique it is while being delicious, because I don't get flavors like this from any other Scotch that I've tried.
Yeah, this is good.
There's a certain dryness to this as well. If it's sort of dry on the back of my palate, but on the front of my palate, I get these very sweet chocolatey notes. But there's nothing overwhelming like if it were aged in like your favorite Nectar d'Or, Chance. There's a sweetness to it, but there's the Scotch itself is not sweet. In fact, I feel it's quite dry. But it's got these very complex. I wouldn't say that it's chocolate as much as it's cocoa, if that makes any sense.
Is that cocoa?
You know?
That's what I was getting even like a coffee, like an Arabic coffee, or you can just imagine a little espresso flavor, chocolate flavor espresso or something in there.
That's midway, but I guess it's that chocolate barley or the roasted barley or something like that. It's got those complex, what is it, the Maillard reaction notes of brown. It's a very brown tasting whiskey, if that makes any sense, compared to the sort of brightness that we saw with the previous Glenmorangies. This is a very toasty, brown, warming whiskey.
Yeah, it's very it's less bright. It's much more smooth. And as Gary said, it brings to mind coffee shops and espresso bars and that sort of stuff. Whereas like the Glenmorangie original, I think about sunshine and sunshine on daisies and all that sort of stuff. And this one, it's much more along the lines of just like, or even like maybe like walking into the house and someone's making a real thick soup that you can just tell is going to be really, really delicious. Like I think I love it.
It's almost savory, and if you look at the color, it's this kind of it's not even amber. It's closer to almost a brown than it is closer to amber. It's almost like
the bottom. Look at the bottom end of the bottle. You can see the bottom end is like slightly clear. That's the whiskey. Then the top is all dark.
It's almost like it looks almost like a cola or like a Dr. Pepper or something. It's only a couple of shades lighter.
Exactly.
Just delicious though. Very, very deep flavorings. Just very like complex.
Try some water. I just had some water, and I'm still even having a finish.
Yeah, I'm still getting chocolate after I'm starting to clear my palate.
It's my lips. That one is just like it just wraps itself around your palate. Delicious. So really good.
They definitely did some sort of experimentation, and I think to say that like, oh, it doesn't have an age statement, so it could have like 2-3-year-old whiskeys in it. I don't think that it really matters a bit in terms of the flavor of the whiskeys.
I mean,
So
also, like,
don't judge a book by its cover.
One of the things that I think is interesting about okay, now Gary, I'm gonna request that you correct me if I'm wrong here, because I may be. My understanding is one of the reasons that age statements are so important is because in Scotland, weather is very consistent. It's cold in the winter, and then it's warmer in the summer, and so where whiskey gets its flavor in a barrel is by the wood contracting and expanding. And so in Scotland, that happens like clockwork because the weather's very consistent. Whereas when you look at some other places, like for instance Texas, where the weather will be 30 degrees one day, 95 degrees the next day, and 40 degrees the day after that, I wonder if age statements are more applicable to Scotland than to other areas because of the consistency you find there versus the stuff you'll find in Texas.
Well, I don't so much. I think yes, totally. And I'm just building on that. I don't think it's the consistency of the weather. I think it's the extreme deltas of the weather. So you guys are like now in Texas, or if you're thinking in Kentucky, they're going to be hitting like 90 degrees easily. So you guys even in Texas will be up over 100. Whereas in Scotland, you're relatively going to be at the high end, high 60s. So say in a warehouse, it's going to be probably in the mid 60s for most of the year. And then in the winter, it's maybe going to dip down. In Scotland, we don't get like now freezing temperatures like in Chicago, we actually have to get into minus Fahrenheit. In Scotland, now you're going to go down to maybe just the 30s. Like that. A cold day is going to be the mid 20s or something, 25. So that's that range. You've got a really tight range of just the heat. So, but because of that, you were talking about that expansion of the barrel. Well, that expansion happens a lot more when you get that extreme heat. So that's why like a 3-year-old bourbon is like a 10-year-old Scotch. You hear them talk about. So if you had like a 10-year-old bourbon, you're effectively probably getting the same effect as a 25, 30-year-old Scotch, because the Scottish one is just it's expanding a lot slower. It's contracting and expanding, not quite as much, and so it's just not quite going in as much. But the bourbon one is just, whoa, we're here, boom, we're going to be straight into that virgin oak. We're dipping in, we're dipping out. 3 years later, boom, we've ripped everything out of the wood. A Scottish one's going to take a little bit longer because it's just not expanding as much to go as deep into the wood as is happening with a bourbon in the higher heats. But that alone, that's just one of the more exciting things. Like that. And that's why when people like now they get a bit snobby towards now, well, it's only like a 3-year-old bourbon. I'd rather my 12-year-old Scotch. I'd say, well, it's basically probably the same. Now, and then the only difference, and they'll say, well, it costs more for the Scotch. You say, yeah, it's economics. It takes them like 3 or 4 times as long. They're having to have it sit in a barrel in a warehouse waiting for it to be made, as well as just shipping it across to the States so we can taste it. Like that. But yeah, absolutely delicious. But which means, to your point, all the way back, that we can really love bourbons. Now, a 3-year-old bourbon like that, absolutely delicious because it's had everything it needs from the barrel and that age. And it's when you're aging it more, that's when you start. That's what actually was. That one is what amazes me on when I'm talking about a 20-year-old now Pappy Van Winkle in 20 years, and you're thinking, geez, that's like the equivalent probably of a 40 or 50-year-old.
Sure.
In the barrel one, because if it's been exposed to such extremes, and I think probably Pappy Van Winkle has got more controlled on the environment it's in, the parts of the warehouse, so it's not maybe quite the extremes for it, because 20-year-old would be a 50-year-old Scotch. You're going to have a lot of wood that's really deeply flavoured that whiskey.
Yeah.
So you've seen that I've been having it sitting here on the side.
Yeah.
I've got my Old Pulteney. We won the captainship. It's a maritime. We're going to do a coastal Northern Highland whiskey. I'll do some of the preamble for the Old Pulteney. Now, 2012, it won Whiskey of the Year. It was chosen as like the best now decidedly whiskey, and that was a 17-year-old in the cask that they had. Traditionally, it's a bourbon cask whiskey. The distillery is physically sitting right on like the edge, of the coast, up there in northeast Scotland. For a couple of 100 years, it was the most northern whiskey distillery in Scotland on the mainland. Because obviously we've got Orkney, but we'll talk about that another week. But it was the most northern on the mainland, and it's like maybe 5 miles just before you get to John O'Groats, which is the most northern point on the British Isles, on the mainland of British Isles. And that's where, we were talking earlier, Wolfsburn opened up. So Kenneco and Upstart opened up about 5-6 years ago, and they've been producing actually some good whiskey. To be fair, that they're busy building up a really nice line. The Old Pulteney, like certainly for me, that's one of my like Northeast Highland favourites, because each region I've got a particularly list, probably something I'm affectionate to. But this one here, so it's now this is very apt for that. So I think now I'll move this from here down to the. We have to have a dram like that. Oops, no. Oh, it's a half dram we're going to have it. Oh, I think we'll go full. So we'll have a full dram on this one. And I think the what's really nice, another one we're finishing off. It was the 21-year-old. Now I've got pour myself some.
So Gary, what can we expect from a coastal dram such as this one, as compared to a more inland distillery?
Yeah, well, so this is one that's now it's subject to a lot of debate, and we'll talk about that when we get to Talisker on the island. But you think of the distilleries there, the warehouses are on the coast, and the debate is the following: how much is the cold, briny sea air impacting the cask? So if you've got a cask that's sitting in a warehouse and you're in the middle of the land, then you don't really have much sea air around. But if you've got the cask that's sitting in a warehouse on the edge of the coast, and you're talking about the northeast now, part of Scotland, and you've got the North Sea, it's a very like now rough sea that's happening up there. You've got now the Atlantic to the north of it. It's just the edge where it comes round the top of Scotland, and you've got this brininess that's in the air that's gone in. So to the fact you were talking about when the cask is expanding in those summer months and then contracting, it's pulling in a little bit of that salty brininess there. So when we have this one, this is what I consider a really good example of a coastal one. Now we're having the 21-year-old, so we're actually now really smoothing it down. But if we're having like say the 12-year-old, this is the one that on the nose. That you're getting some butters. That you get some actually black licorice quite often when I've had this one. And this is the one that's that like now I've always told you it's that surprise one. So you smell there and you think, okay, fine, Highland, kind of thing to expect, and you put a little bit in the tongue. And you get that little tingle that's there. Now what's interesting, we're having the 21-year-old, so you guys are used to when we've tried a 12-year-old, you certainly get a lot of the tingle. But this one's at smoothing out, that now bourbon cask is mellowed it. And
so this is pure bourbon. This is only bourbon casks.
Mm-hmm.
Holy moly, this is good. Like, wow.
You get that, but you've still got that salty tingle. I mean, I call it a salty tingle, but it's that little.
It's got salty or seaweed, almost just very close to being seaweed to me.
Yeah.
And again, it may be just be psychological because we know this is on the coast, but still, just comparing this to the Signet, which we just had, this is just completely, just utterly different.
Different, isn't it? Yeah.
Alien compared to.
Absolutely would be valued as a finishing dram.
Yeah,
like our Signet and our Glendronach.
So we've gone high here this week. Now that Glendronach to start with on a high note, but that Signet, and then finishing on a 21-year-old Old Pulteney.
This is so complex. To me, there's a underlying spiciness to this.
Mm-hmm.
Like an almost exotic spiciness to it.
Yeah,
like it comes close to being almost peppery for me.
Yeah. Particularly this 21, so it's been sitting there. It's aging a lot more. So that younger one, it's a lot more just the straight salt. This one here, we're starting to get a little bit of like cinnamon. Is it cinnamon pepperish?
So is this bottle at 46% for you, Gary?
My one's bottled at 46 as well.
Okay, cool.
So I'm keeping it aside just now because I'm going to have to fix the cork situation with it.
Yeah, I'm getting the cinnamon, maybe some brown sugar, maybe.
But it's a side effect, unlike some of these other drams,
Yeah, agreed. I love that salt. That salt mixed with it just is so good.
There's
or that salt, the brine, like not like sea salt, but like.
Yeah. So what's really good is when this is like a good example of a coastal. If you're saying a coastal whiskey, this is an excellent example of a coastal whiskey. You're really getting a little bit of brininess, It's actually got when this is lightly peated, very lightly peated in Old Pulteney. They'll use maybe like 5 ppm, which is really light. It's a very just a little smattering of it they're doing. So it's the peat isn't the malted barley is just ever so lightly, but nothing to write home about.
It feels like this is more of a finishing whiskey than either the Parliament 21 or the Signet. This is like the very powerful. To me, this has a strength to it, and it's not just because it was bottled at 46, because we know that the Signet was also bottled at 46. But there's just a lot of power and complexity to this. It's just sort of like a crescendo of an orchestra, you know.
Yeah, this is a great way for us to like be finishing this northern point of Scotland. It'll set us up nicely for when we move over to the islands next.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's just tremendously complex and delicious, and it feels stronger to me than 46. I almost thought that this was because an independent bottling would be a cask strength or something like that.
50 plus.
But it's just that complex, you know. In fact, I want to try to get this down a little bit. I'm going to put a couple of drops of water in what I have remaining of this. Yeah. I'm just going to put 6 drops of water in there, see what happens, you know. I mean, worst thing that happens, I'll have to drink it. So, see, I didn't do the rub test either.
No, just there's not a lot.
No, but the brininess is coming to the fore on the rub test here.
I'm not getting a deep wood. Yeah, it's not with the wood side of it.
Oh wow. I mean, I didn't have much left. I did 2 drops, and man, the salty sea air that came out from 2 drops is incredible.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Man, I mean, I just feel like saying that's bullshit, but it's right there, you know.
And you know what? This is always that whiskey I've always loved when we're tasting it, because it's like on the nose is totally different to on the tongue, and this one, and it's one of the weirdest effects. I mean, it's up there. It's not there, but it's up there like with our French friend Bren. You're doing that from the side off. It's just like it evokes a lot of emotions. This one, I just love the faces of people when they first smell and they go, okay, I can smell, right? Okay, maybe some butter and black licorice, and then when you have it in the tongue,
it's just such a clean smelling whiskey.
Yeah,
it's very clean, you know.
And then, well, the other factoid, we'll talk about the bottle shape. I've seen like the shape of the bottle. That. So it's like a dumpy bottle. It's once more, it's got like the still type one there. And one of the things with this one is really good, and actually this has probably given some of the flavour to it, is the fact that the distillery manager in the 1810s, they got a new still coming in, and he couldn't fit it into the distillery, and so the top end of it, now the still comes and you've got like the neck coming up, so he cut off the top of the neck so as he could move the still in. He took the top of the neck, went in, and then soldered it back on. But when he'd done that, he'd cut out a section of it so that it could fit into the distillery, and that there has set the history of Old Pulteney. So what you've got is a really, instead of it being a long rising neck, it's got a small dumpier neck. So what's happening? What you're bringing through is a lot more of those thick, we'll call them fatty notes that are coming through to it, that are then going into the distillation. Like that. So instead of it being a long rising, which many of them are, this is a short dumpy. So we're getting lots of thick flavors are coming through on something.
That's amazing.
Like a bourbon cask. And certainly from that, what they're bringing through is some big oily flavors, and so obviously people say maybe that's where that, like now you're bringing some of those, a little bit of that seaweed brininess from. Another argument is no, it's really from sitting there for, now this is 21 years, but you're sitting there for many years breathing in this like northern Scottish, now briny air that's there. But the argument continues.
Well, that completes the gentleman's trip through the Scottish Highlands. Please join us next week as they continue their adventure through the Orkney Islands. Thank you for joining us for a dram and a blether.
And as always, please drink responsibly.